downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
Right on, ladies and gentlemen, it's another edition of the Buckeye Leafcast. I'm your host, Andy Evans. Joining me, as he always does, the intergalactic Buckeye fan to talk about a big win for the Buckeyes on Saturday over the Army Black Knights, the one and only Mr. Chris Stefanick.
All right.
What's going on, sir? How we doing on this glorious, beautiful day after a big Buckeye win?
Well, you know, my Buckeye experience is not capped until I get to hear that nice introduction, so I'm feeling much better now.
Kind. Too kind, sir. Too kind. Well, I mean every word of it, sir, because if, like I've always said, there's anybody who can break down a Buckeye game, whether it be a win, whether it be a loss, you're the master at it, sir. So I can't wait to get your thoughts on the 38-7 win that the Buckeyes posted over Army on Saturday. JT Barrett came out, had a pretty good game. I think it was just what the doctor ordered for him to maybe instill a little bit of confidence back into his passing game. Went 25 of 33, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked a couple of times, but otherwise thought he had a pretty good game. He also toted the ball 7 times on the ground, 32 yards with another score, and a couple of big narratives on this game, Chris. Of course, number one was the outstanding play of true freshman running back JK Dobbins, who went nuts once again. Insane average carrying the ball, and I know you're going to spit those stats out here in a second, but 13 carries, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns for the true freshman from Texas. And the other narrative is that Ohio State now has a Big Ten record-setting quarterback. JT, with the 3 touchdowns that he was responsible for yesterday, is now the all-time Big Ten leader in touchdowns, responsible for breaking Drew Brees' record of 17 years. A 17-year-old record. JT Barrett now surpasses the future Hall of Famer Drew Brees in being the Big Ten's all-time leader in touchdowns, responsible for. So lay it on me, brother. Lay it on us. What did you see good? What did you see bad? I want to get your opinion on really, was this the kind of win that Ohio State needed to follow up with Oklahoma, or was it just kind of, yeah, all right, it's Army, big deal, you know, let's move on and see what the rest of the season holds. But for now, I thought a pretty damn good victory.
Well, you know, our past defensive woes are solved. We only surrendered 19 yards passing.
All right, so let me tell you what, if there's any offense that a defense needs to face in helping out being dead last in the entire country in passing yards allowed, it's a team that runs a triple option and doesn't throw too often.
Yeah, no, 19 yards surrendered. Clearly, you know, Sheffield and Damon Arnett are now first-round draft picks, so.
Oh, what, are you kidding me? They had the games of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, this is one of those that it's hard to gauge it, you know, because while I thought they played really well versus Army, there wasn't much not to like about the game on
Sure.
both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
How much of it translates to like any other team in the world they would play, you know? How much?
That's the question.
Yeah, because they, you know, what they did on offense was pretty much they would throw those little bubble screens to check, to, you know, test the outside, and then that loosened up the middle, and then they'd run out the middle. And that's pretty much all they did. You know, I think they only threw it, I think JT was 1 for 5 and passes more than 10 yards downfield. So
yeah, I don't know the exact stat, but it was something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it might have been 2. There was Marcus Ball had 1, and then McLaurin had the touchdown. But those were like the only ones beyond 10 that he completed, and there was a whole bunch of misses down the field. And you know, those screens, while you know those bubble screens were going for 8-10 yards versus Army, do you really think we're going to be able to get that versus Penn State? You know, it's with the superior athletes, you know, versus Army. It's like our wide receivers look like amazing run blockers. You know, they were standing guys up, and those little bubble screens would go for 10 yards. I don't know. I think, you know, they're going to have a hard time turning those into more than 2 or 3 yards versus a Penn State, right? So,
agreed.
On offense, while they did need to get some confidence for JT, and he completed 75% of his passes. But at the same time, those were mostly like long handoffs, right? And not very much downfield. The running game looks awesome. Like you said, JK Dobbins is just unfrickin' real. That one
man-child.
Yeah, that one touchdown run he had. First of all, it started with good blocking up front. He didn't have to worry about anything till he was at least 5-10 yards past the line of scrimmage. But then a guy had him dead to rights, and he just juked him out of his shorts.
I think that dude's undies is still laying on the field, man.
And then just outran everybody to the side. So he's got the speed, balance, the juking ability, and he, in that low center of gravity, being a smaller guy. He's like 5'8", 210.
Yep.
He's really got good balance in that. And he gets a little lost behind our gigantic 6'7" offensive linemen as well.
Yeah.
The offensive linemen are a foot taller than him. He could be a little hard to track down. So, lots to like with JK. And the running backs as a whole, like if you add up what Antonio Williams, JK, and Mike Weber, what they did as a group, they averaged 10 yards per carry. So part of me was just sitting there. I'm like, as a group, they're getting 10 yards per carry. It's a freaking first down per carry. Why they didn't just keep running it? Why are you even trying to throw it?
I understood why they were obviously throwing the ball as much as they did. I think a lot of people out there at this point, especially after the Oklahoma game and the success that we talked about last week and them running the ball against Oklahoma, you thought, why the hell are you still trying to throw the ball as often as you are when it's obvious that it's not working and your running game is being successful? Last weekend, Weber and Dobbins combined for over 100 yards and 10 yards a carry or something like that. This week, Dobbins goes nuts. Like you said, Antonio Williams, he comes in 5 carries, 29 yards. Heck, Paris Campbell, 2 carries for 26 yards. Really the one guy that didn't have probably quite the game that he would have liked, and that was Mike Weber. Only 4 carries for 13 yards in this game. So it's becoming more and more apparent that Mike Weber is kind of getting lost in the shuffle here as far as the running game is concerned. Now, is that because he's still not 100% as far as his health is concerned, or is J.K. Dobbins really just coming on? Obviously, yes, Dobbins is coming on. That's a stupid question to ask. But is Mike Weber, is he just kind of getting lost in the shuffle here?
He got Wally pipped. We've been saying, coming into the season, I remember talking to you and asking okay, Mike Weber is a nice back, but he's not really an Ohio State starting caliber running back. And the reason I say that is I was like, okay, can you tell me who is he better than that was a starting running back? Think back to a starting running back from Ohio State that Mike Weber is better than. And I'm like, do you have to go back to Lydell Ross? I'm not sure, because he's probably better than Lydell Ross, but I'm like, who else? Boom Herron I would take over Mike Weber. Who would you put? I'm like, I don't know. He's when you're the worst starting running back that a school has had in 15 years. That's below expectations. He's a nice player, but maybe as a second or third string running back at Ohio State, right? So, we're just back. Now JK is amazing. JK, it's early, right? We're only talking about 3 games into his career, but
right.
When you look at who's better than JK? You almost have to reverse it, because he's better than a lot of the guys that have started here, I would say. And, but the only one who offhand who I think of that I'm like, well, I would definitely take this guy over JK, and that's Zeke. But I don't even know, right now, he looks kind of Zeke-ish, he really does. He's got the only reason I'm saying that is because Zeke is looking like the best running back on the planet, so I'd still take Zeke over JK, but but it's hard to find. I'm like, who would you definitively take over JK after Zeke? And that's hard. That's a tough one. Would you take Claret over Zeke if Claret was a was a choir boy, you know.
Now, yeah, I was going to say, now how far back are we going? You know, I mean, in my 40 years on this planet, and about 35, 36 of them, I can honestly remember running back wise here at Ohio State, you know, Claret.
Yeah, you probably have to go back to, I mean, after Zeke, you probably have to go back to Claret to take a running back over JK.
Yeah, well, you look at, you know, how about a Beanie Wells? How about an Antonio Pittman? You know?
Oh, he definitely, I put JK over Antonio Pittman.
I would probably put Dobbins over Pittman. However, not sure yet I would, after only 3 games, anoint him as being, and it's early. I mean, we're kind of freaking out, or at least I'm freaking out over a kid, after only seeing him in 3 games. 2 of those games, you know, let's face it, weren't, well, and Indiana, you know, not, you know, Big Ten team on the road. That was a huge deal. And, you know, Army, I mean, this is a team that, I heard a stat yesterday during the broadcast that, you know, this is a defense that has traditionally been in the top 20, for the last couple of years. Now, was that the same Army defense we saw yesterday? You know, but.
Well, they had won Dobbins, 5 games in a row coming into yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you know, let's not take anything away from Army. I think they've been making strides. I mean, for years, Chris, Army was just a bad football team. I mean, we're talking 2-3 wins a year for like 10 years straight. And so the last couple of seasons, they've been getting better. And, you know, hopefully they can go on to have a good season, not only for just making Ohio State look good, but yeah, damn it, it's Army. You know, we got to root for our armed forces football teams, you know? I mean, to see what Ohio State did, to break off of our Dobbins topic just for a second, to see what they did yesterday, a lot of the ways that, you know, the team, acknowledged Army and really paid tribute to them, meeting like the whole team, both teams, the whole entire friggin' teams came out to the middle of the field before the game. They all shook hands, and Ohio State had a parachuter come in with a big Army parachute and a little Ohio State flag. And, you know, Urban Meyer talked after the game about how much respect he has, you know, not only just for Army as obviously a football team, but as, you know, just the armed forces in general. Really cool stuff to see. So I'm hoping that Army, damn it, can have a good season, just for the fact that, you know, they're Army, and we gotta honor these guys. They're gonna go out at some point, guys and gals, and put their lives on the line. Some of them will, and keep this country safe. And we definitely, you know, have to you know, pay tribute and really acknowledge them in that regard. And plus, like I said, it's just gonna make Ohio State look better at the end of the year too, as far as strength of schedule for the College Football Playoff Committee is concerned. But back to Dobbins, you know, you look at, you know, some of the guys, yeah, that you, at least through 3 games, you know, at the end of the year, we can definitely have more of a talk of this, you know, seeing how he's going to perform the rest of the season. But right now, you know, there's definitely some guys. Lydell Ross, yeah, definitely put him ahead of Lydell Ross. I probably would even put him ahead of Antonio Pittman. And that's kind of tough for me to say, because Antonio Pittman was a darn good back. You know, is he going to go down as one of the greatest in Ohio State history? Definitely not top 5 or whatever. But, you know, Pittman, I believe, is in the top 10 as far as overall rushing yards are concerned. So Pittman had a pretty damn good career here at Ohio State. But Dobbins, certainly at this point, man, he's looking good. And, you know, we talked about Mike Weber. Yeah, just not seeing that it factor, not seeing that oomph from him. And all he did was go out and run for over 1,000 yards in his redshirt freshman year. Only the 3rd freshman ever in Ohio State history to do it. And now we've got a true freshman who is probably, at least at this point, he is on pace to be another 1,000-yard rusher and might run for more yards than Weber did last year. And yeah, poor Mike Weber. I mean, I kind of feel bad for the guy, but you said it best. He got Wally pipped. He's been pipped, man. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's kind of tough to see that, but, you know, the better man, you know, steps up and plays to their potential, and JK Dobbins has done that. And pretty freakish too, about a guy that didn't even play his senior year.
Yeah, it's great to watch. And just wanted to go back to Army real quick. You know, it's pretty cool. Like, I was talking to one of my friends who he's got a season ticket holder for Ohio State going back like 20 years, and he said this is the first time he can remember when the opposing team ran on the field, the crowd cheered.
And the crowd cheered.
Got a standing
ovation. And you know what, God? I was so hoping that the crowd would do that. You know what I mean? Because you see, more often than not, the opposing team comes in and the Boo Birds come out. And for good reason. I mean, that happens to Ohio State when they're on the road.
It's nothing. That's totally fine for that to happen. It's a fun thing to do. You're there having a good time, but that was kind of cool that they did that. And then after the field, Army joined Ohio State to sing Carmen, Ohio, joined in on that great tradition. And, I was kind of surprised when, their quarterback ran out and stuck the Army flag in the middle of Block O, but, oh, wait a minute, that was last week.
Yeah. You're getting your quarterbacks confused.
Oh, that's
sir.
Right. That didn't happen. This was the one this was the class act, not the total disrespectful classless team that played. So, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
Army
the one that appreciated the tradition of singing Carmen, Ohio to the band and actually joined in on it rather than taking that as some kind of affront that how dare you come into our stadium and hold your traditions,
Yeah, total class act by Army there. Absolutely. Great point, dude. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So but back to the game, the Buckeyes 38-7 win. Were there some things in this game that maybe you saw Ohio State still needs to improve on? Or was this kind of, like I said with JT, what the doctor ordered in them for kind of build a little bit of confidence up after, getting handed a beat down by Oklahoma?
So, first of all, before I get too critical, I will just say the offense was really balanced. One of the most balanced attacks you'd have. So they ran the ball 32 times, passed it 37. They had 316 yards passing versus 270 rushing. They had 2 touchdowns through the air, 3 on the ground. I mean, heck, they had 8.5 yards per pass and 8.4 yards per carry overall.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, it was like really balanced across the board.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't want to seem like I'm being too critical. And JT passed for 75%, which is what, the things that, he's taken a lot of criticism for is not being very, very accurate, and it's interesting because he historically is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in Ohio State's history. We talked about this last week, how he's number 2 behind only Todd Beckman. And of course he played a lot more than Todd Beckman ever did at Ohio State. So, for him to have number 2 but when I was looking at during the game yesterday, they showed a statistic of completion percentage for JT through his 4 years at Ohio State. And he was really great in 2014. And each year was worse than the previous one afterwards. So 2014, you're like, remember, like, he's getting Heisman votes. He's just a freshman. He's like, wins, the silver trophy for Big Ten MVP. And you're
last 2 years. Yes, he has.
Yeah. And you're sitting there thinking like, this guy is going to be amazing. He's just a freshman. How good is he going to be, a couple of years down the road? We're not even going to have him for 4 years, sitting there thinking that kind of stuff, right? But it's like he's every year gotten worse than the year before, at least from completion percentage. And now I'm wondering after that was early in the game when they flashed that up there. And then by the time the end of the game, he had, 75% throwing on the day, which might have pulled up his percentage for this year a little bit, so that he was not quite so bad as, the previous year. So we'll see. It's still early in the year, right? But, it's a really balanced attack. Another thought I had was, Kevin Wilson early in the week was falling on the sword for the offense. And he said, I take the blame for it. We didn't have an identity. And he goes, a lot of that was me. He's like, I was just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. And, he's like, we need to have an identity. He's like, after the game, I said, okay, what's our offense? What are we going to hang our hat on? And let's do that. And so they came into the game and, they were throwing bubble screens and running up the middle. And maybe that's what they hang their hat on, maybe that's what their identity is because they're good at that and they're not good at much else. So at least with JT back there, they're not good at anything downfield passing. So that would be an improvement rather than like trying to, jam a square peg into a round hole, right? If they at least stick to what they're good at and run the running backs. JT, 7 carries for the game. You know, the running backs had more carries than JT. That is something we can look at and be positive about, right? That wasn't the case last week. That wasn't the case I think I sent you a statistic. They were saying in Urban Meyer's 7 losses at Ohio State, and 5 of them, the quarterbacks had more carries than the running backs.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, whenever the game's tight, he runs the quarterback, and it doesn't work very well. You know, it's like, especially when you got running backs like Zeke and JK Dobbins, you know, it's like, give the ball to the guy who's amazing with it in his hands, you know?
Yes.
So, I mean, there were things to like. Again, I don't know that game plan works versus Penn State. I mean, well, here's another thing too, is like, I was like, okay, how much of this was identity? This is their identity to do bubble screens, and how much of it was, this is just taking what Army is giving us? Because if you were watching during the game, the cornerbacks for Army were way off the line of scrimmage. And
yes,
a way to counteract that is just throw a little quick screen or a little quick slant. Those are, you know, those 10-yard and less passes are the correct call in that case. You know, and that's what they're getting. You know, take what the defense gives you generally. But, you know, what's going to happen if the defense isn't giving us that and we're playing talent that's, you know, roughly equal to our own?
I think it was a combination of both. I think that, number one, yes, Kevin Wilson was falling on the sword for Urban Meyer. I think that it was painfully obvious that the first 2 games were more Urban Meyer and his offensive playbook rather than Kevin Wilson's. I'm assuming those two kind of had a talk. Maybe Kevin said, look, Urban, I love you, man. You're my boy, but you hired me to come in and run my offense, okay? I have coached and ran offenses for 2 Heisman Trophy winners, one of which nobody can remember his name. The other guy, he's playing in the NFL right now. Trust and believe me, I know what it's going to take to get JT Barrett as effective as possible when running this offense. And having him sit in the pocket and throw downfield all game is not the answer. Trust and believe me, quick, short passes. We can execute some screens, and they were doing that a lot, and I think that was because Kevin Wilson saw that Army was giving the receivers a lot of space and knew that the physicality of Ohio State's receivers was much better than the defensive backs of Army, and that's why you saw as many screens as you did. And those short intermediate routes, you know, let's run some curl routes. Let's sit them down in the zone. That's what we saw in the second half against Indiana, and it worked. I think you saw Kevin Wilson's offense in the second half against Indiana. I think you saw Kevin Wilson's offense yesterday, and that's what Kevin Wilson is great at doing. You know, let's throw short. We've got a great quarterback who is getting ready to set a Big Ten record, which of course, like we said, he did. And let's utilize his skills. Sitting him in the pocket and having him throw downfield all game is not what JT Barrett's good at. He's good at running a read option. He is good at throwing short, intermediate, quick passes, a little curl route that's 8 yards sitting down in the middle of a zone, or, you know, some mesh routes to where he's throwing over the middle 5-6 yards and having them turn up the field and make plays. And I think that, are they going to be able to do that against the Penn States, against the Michigans, against even the, other teams in the Big Ten, the Nebraskas, the Iowas? Maybe not, now maybe Nebraska, because they did not look good yesterday, losing at home to Northern Illinois. Now granted, Northern Illinois is the, Alabama of the MAC. So take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth. But, nonetheless, maybe they can get away with that with some teams in the Big Ten, but not every team. But, I thought that the offense, and as long as this was Kevin Wilson calling the plays, this can be an effective offense down the road. Now, yeah, they're probably going to have to throw in some new wrinkles against some of the stiffer Big Ten opponents. But otherwise, I thought it was a beautiful game plan. I thought they executed it well. And, you know, an Army defense was just what the doctor ordered. And they made it, you know, they pretty much looked great all game long. And like you said, very balanced, you know, great rushing attack, 270 yards on the ground, and JT and our boy Dwayne Haskins saw the field for his first time as a Buckeye and went 4 for 4 and I believe 46 yards, and you know he looked great on the passes that he threw, but over 300 yards passing for the game. So let's hope that we can continue to see this kind of production throughout the year, and if we do, this Ohio State team is going to be very, very good, especially when you mix in the rushing attack, especially with a guy like JK Dobbins.
Yeah, and I tell you what, for those people who are critical of JT Barrett and, you know, his noodle arm, Haskins did nothing to quell that storm. You know, he came in, now granted it was 4 plays, 4 passes, he was 4 for 4, but I mean, he did nothing. But looked good. You know, he was decisive. He made good decisions. He got the ball out quick. He was accurate.
Yep.
And boy, did he throw that thing on a rope. I mean,
I'm telling you what, frickin' lasers, man. Yeah. Frickin' lasers.
Yeah. I mean, it was impressive. And, you know, you could sit here and say, oh, it was against the backups from Army. And it was. But those balls were so accurate and thrown so fast that it wouldn't have mattered who was covering them. Those were going to be complete. You know? So he, boy, and he does not have a noodle arm. Let me just say that. So
no, he does not.
You know,
he does not. Yeah, he looked great. I'm with you, man. He throwing some darts, and granted, yes, against Army's second team, but well, I talked to a buddy. He texted me, said the same thing, and I said, well, you know, against Army's second team, let's hold back. He said, hey, he was throwing to some third team, you know, guys himself. And I said, well, that's a fair point. And one guy was Trevon Grimes, another true freshman, got into the ball game. I guess he's not going to be redshirted this year. And he caught a pass, for 8 yards. But still, that was great to see him get in the game and get some experience. So, yeah, I don't think we have a quarterback controversy on our hands necessarily. But Dwayne Haskins, boy, yeah, he came in and looked, like we thought we would see. And granted, yes, it was with about 4.5 minutes left to go. But still, he looked pretty damn good. I was impressed in those 4 passes that he threw.
Yeah, I mean, there's no controversy. I mean, their fans would like there to be one. You know, Carmen Jackson and, Micah Parsons or whatever would like there to be one. But,
who?
But so these are recruits that were tweeting out that Dwayne Haskins should go in during the Army game. In fact, Micah Parsons was on an official visit at Ohio State. And while he's on the visit, on the sidelines, or wherever it is they put the recruits, he's going on Twitter saying, put in Haskins. You not heard this?
Ooh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah. And so apparently he then issued an apology like a day or two later, saying, you know, I was letting my emotions get the best of me. Sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. So apparently
this was during the Oklahoma game.
Yeah. So apparently the coach has found out about that. Now, Carmen Jackson was saying the same thing, and they asked him about it, and he was like, came back with some response like, well, if I was making that tweet from another team's locker room, they wouldn't have minded. You know, like kind of replying like, well, I can just go to Clemson, because you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, like he might go to Clemson. Now, you know.
So he was basically saying, don't get up in my stuff here. If I want to say that, I'll say it, and you're going to like it if you want me to come play football for you.
Yeah, basically.
Bold.
Yeah.
Bold.
Very,
I like it.
Well, I don't like, I think it's stupid. That's something you don't say in public when you're part of the team, you know. It's,
well, he's not technically part of the team. That's the thing.
But if he's wanting to be on the team,
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's what you can think that, and maybe you say that to the coaches when you're there on your visit, say, you know, whatever, you know, I think that, I'm not really impressed with what JT's doing. But you just don't go out in public and say that. You don't.
Well, I agree.
You know.
And that's a kid being a kid. We're all, hell, you know, we have a leader of this country who's 70 years old and takes to Twitter and says some of the most insane, outrageous, dumb crap. So an 18-year-old kid, 70-year-old president of the United States. At this point, Twitter is obviously a platform where you get on there, you say what you want, and you know what? Say it and don't take it back. Say it, stand by it, and mean it.
And who
I
cares
do agree.
If it's like completely not true? You know, who cares if there's all these facts that show that? No, as a matter of fact, you know, it wasn't the largest turnout for a speech, but damn it, I'm going to stick by it.
That's my thing, dude. If you're gonna say it, either A, get your facts straight, or B, you know, just say it and don't have any qualms about it,
Facts
and don't back
man.
off of
what
it.
What do facts matter for?
Exactly. I mean, it's all fake news anyways, Chris, so
exactly,
who cares,
yeah.
you know? Yeah. But, no, do I agree with you though? Well, yeah, was that a dumb thing to say and to take to Twitter? Absolutely. But you're a dumb kid. You said it though. You learned from your mistake and hopefully.
He didn't learn from it though. He's sitting there like shooting back when people, you know, he's like, well, you know, I could always just go to Clemson. They won't mind if I sit there and say that put in, bench JT, you know? So
well,
he didn't learn from it.
Well, at least not yet. You know, once, you know, he's young. Let's give him some time to come along in life and learn the ins and outs of what you should and shouldn't say. I mean, obviously, you know, you and I being the ever so knowledgeable ones in the world.
Wise beyond our years.
Wise beyond our years. Of course we know we're not going to take to Twitter and say something like that. I think social media is a silly platform to stand up on and voice your opinions anyways. You know what? No offense. I really don't care if you check into Chipotle today for lunch. Okay. That's great. Eat your burrito and be happy. Do you have to tell everybody about it? Do people really care if I, you know, tweet I'm taking a poop right now? Hey, I just want to let you know, Andy Evans is, on the toilet in his house right now taking a dump. I mean, I can tweet it out. I can take to Facebook and put it up there if I want to, but you know, not everything has to be out there on social media for everybody else to learn and to hear.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me 10 years ago that you wouldn't be calling up 50 of your closest friends and saying, hey, I just want to let you know I had a burrito?
Now, I might have sent an email out, but I'm not sure I'd call each and every one of them.
Oh.
Anyways, back to the topic at hand. No, that's, I did not see that. Is he a stupid kid? Yeah, sure. But, let's hope he learns from it as he becomes, as wise as and knowledgeable beyond his years as we have become. But you know what? Hey, maybe that's just not the kind of kid we want. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, my point was that, like, there really isn't a quarterback controversy. You know, a lot of people are not pleased with JT, and, you know, the quarterback, when things are going well, they get too much of the credit. When things are going poorly, they get too much of the blame. And right now, you know, the offense isn't looking like the 2014 offense, and so JT is getting the blame, but Urban is not going to bench JT. I mean, he's made that abundantly clear. No. The only way somebody else is starting this year is if JT gets injured. So, so the good news is, you know, if God forbid JT does get injured, we look to be in good hands. Like, you know, it might be a Wally Pipp kind of situation because that would force Urban's hands. And, boy, Haskin looks good. And remember last time JT went down with an injury, the offense, like, went from being really good to being, like, insanely unreal. Zeke running for 700 yards versus three of the best teams in the country, kind of good, you know. So it's at least we can rest easy that there is, you know, a pretty solid record-setting quarterback starting, and if he goes down, we'll still be all right.
How about the play of a one Tuf Borland?
Speaking of Wally Pipp.
Oh my goodness. Did Worley just get Wally Pipped? I mean, Chris Worley suffers an injury in the second quarter. Tuf Borland comes in the game, and all Tuf Borland does is come out, lead the team in tackles, had 12 total tackles in the game, 9 of them solo, 1 for loss, had a quarterback hit, and was just, I mean, dude played out of his mind. Out of his mind. And Urban Meyer came out after the game, said that Worley has a little sprained foot, so who knows what's going to happen with Chris Worley throughout the rest of his 5th year senior season. But boy, Tuf Borland, man, came in and just looked unbelievable.
Yeah, he did. He looked really, really good. It's another one of those cases where I wonder how well does this translate to other teams.
Mm-hmm.
Your middle linebacker should lead the team in tackles when you're playing the wishbone. You know, when you're playing that option attack.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he at the same time, he looked good. He had no problem sticking his nose in there, you know, play after play after play and, you know, playing tough, you know, and getting lots of tackles. And where the linebackers have really disappointed this year is where the whole defense is disappointed is versus the pass. Linebackers have looked lost in pass coverage. So, can Tuf Borland cover a tight end? Can he cover a running back coming out of the backfield? I don't know. And that's what I would like to see. If, you know, he looked better than Worley has looked all year, but would he look better than Worley if he had to cover tight ends? That I don't know. So we'll have to watch and find out. And, but it's intriguing. You know, he does look good. He's young. And, I mean, there's in theory a lot of good linebacker depth there. Malik Harrison looked pretty good. We got some Keandre Jones in there. You know, Dante Booker was like I mean, he played a little bit, but I don't know if you noticed. They played with 3 safeties pretty much the whole game. They basically took Booker out.
Yep.
They were playing both, you know, of course Webb was in there, but then they were playing both Jordan Fuller and Eric Smith the whole game. Which is kind of counterintuitive, you think, when you're playing against a team that doesn't throw the ball, that why would you go with basically a nickel defense?
I thought that same exact thing.
But they, you know, of course, Eric Smith and Jordan Fuller and Webb all had, especially Smith and Webb had tons of tackles. I think Smith and Webb both had career highs in tackles on the game. And, you know, you're typically your safeties and your linebackers are going to get tons of tackles in the run game, right? When running backs are carrying the ball. So not too surprising, but yeah, they went with the defensive backs to try to contain, like they were putting the safeties out there kind of on the edge to keep the contain. And, they wanted to make sure Army couldn't get to the outside, and it worked. You know, they only had that one drive. They had that one 99-yard drive, which was really impressive.
99 yards of all the drives that Army puts together and scores a touchdown. It's on a 99-yard drive.
I mean, that was crazy. And I mean, Ohio State only touched the ball one time in the second quarter because of that 99-yard drive. That's just
unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. I mean, it was one of the most incredible drives from that perspective that I can remember. You know, I almost have to go back to the time of like, what was it? Juice Williams with Illinois. I remember that loss to Illinois. Like Ohio State's down by a score, and they get stopped. There's like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they get stopped, and they go to punt. And I'm like, yeah, you know, we'll punt. Defense has to step up, get a stop, get the ball back, and then we're in business, right? You know, we're all right. We'll punt this away. Defense step up. Ohio State never saw the ball again that game. The game ended with, you know, Juice Williams taking a freaking knee. And it was just like this amazing drive that, it wasn't even a scoring drive. It was just using up clock after clock after clock, even with Ohio State calling all its timeouts. But anyway, I'm like, man, is this like this drive was like reminiscent to me of that like painful memory, right? And, but at any rate, that's all they gave up the whole game. You know, I mean, that was their 7 points. And, you know, I mean, you're not going to shut Army completely down. That's why they run the option, is because it wouldn't matter if they're playing Alabama, they're still going to get, 150, 200 yards rushing. That's just how it is. But they did pretty good on that. So.
Yeah, that was very intriguing to me too, that they basically pulled Booker out, put that third safety in, and kept Tuf Borland in the game though. So basically they were playing Borland over Booker and an extra safety. And I thought the same thing. I noticed that at one point. Someone had tweeted out something to another reporter, and I saw the tweet and asked, what's up with Booker? And the reporter responded, don't know. He's on the sideline without his helmet on. And at that point, then I looked out at the field and saw that, yeah, there's a third safety in there. And instead of Booker as the other linebacker, along with Jerome Baker, they had Tuf Borland in there. And I'm like, holy crap, what's going on here? And I thought, oh boy, Booker must have gotten nicked up or something again. And so they're, obviously that's why Borland is in instead of him. But then Booker came in at the end of the game when the second teamers were out there, in the fourth quarter. And I was like, oh, okay. So apparently Tuf Borland was just seeing the field rather than Dante Booker. I thought that was weird. You would think that, yeah, against a rushing offense, you want an extra linebacker in there instead of a safety, because, they're trying to obviously fill gaps and plug holes, and a linebacker is going to be able to do that a little better than a safety. But, for whatever reason, it was, Tuf Borland seeing the field instead of, Dante Booker. Booker had one tackle all game, one tackle.
Yep.
Damon Webb and Eric Smith, to your point, 9 tackles each. Damon Webb had half a tackle for loss. Eric Smith, the only 2 pass breakups that Ohio State had in the game, were from Eric Smith. So Eric Smith definitely played a better game than he played last week.
Well, let's see how many Wally Pipp references we can get in here. So,
oh my gosh.
If you remember last year, Booker got Wally Pipped by Jerome Baker. He had Booker had a little injury. It was supposed to be real minor. Baker came in and played great. Booker got better, but he couldn't get his job back.
Yeah.
So I think Booker, highly touted kid coming out of high school, has just never really been able to light the world on fire at Ohio State. He's just, even this year with, they're playing safeties over top of him. So it's interesting. I mean, now that granted, Army is kind of a unique case. So we'll see what happens when they get back to their base defense, but. Yeah, it's funny how these kids in high school, the ones, the recruiting, it gives you an idea of how they're going to do, but it's just not an exact science, right? So like Hilliard, who is finally starting to get at least some play on special teams, a 5-star linebacker, he was the highest ranked kid in his class.
Yep.
And I was sitting there like yesterday, I'm like, oh, hey, Hilliard just got, he was in on special teams. I saw him a couple times out there on special teams. I'm like, hey, this guy, cause I couldn't remember ever seeing him out there ever, before this.
I don't think he has. I don't think he's seen. Now, if he played yesterday, I didn't notice, but as far as actual, on the defense, not just special teams, but, Justin Hilliard, just one of those kids that maybe for whatever reasons just, not gonna pan out, or there's just talent coming in that's just better than him. And, just cause a kid is like a 4 or 5-star kid in one class, there could be another class where there's a 3-star kid, but there's so much talent in that class that 3-star kid is actually better than a previous class's 5-star kid, but there just wasn't as much talent in that class as before. Now, is that a fair comparison or whatever? I don't know. But certainly Justin Hilliard is a guy that I had high expectations for as well. And yeah, he's getting pipped too in a certain degree. He's not even really getting pipped. I'm not even sure what you would call this. He's just not seeing the field. It's just not clicking or something.
Well, he suffered a lot of injuries, so I think
he has.
I think I'm trying to remember if it was he tore his pec. He tore a bicep. Maybe that's what it was.
I believe so.
I think he tore a bicep and then he tore it again. Maybe it's like he tore one bicep one year and then next year he tore the other bicep or something freaky like
crazy.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was the number one player in Ohio and the number one kid in his class coming into that. I think it was it 2015? I think he was the number one kid in the class of 2015, or the highest ranked kid in the class of 2015. So
yeah.
It just goes to show. But, hold on a second. My phone is fucking freaking.
Now I hear that.
My phone is like, you know how the auto, you could do like vocal commands,
Oh, yeah.
Somehow it started thinking that I was telling it to do something like, Siri, what's the weather like in China? For some reason it was thinking like I was giving it commands, and I'm like, I'm not giving you commands. Shut the fuck up.
Shut up.
But the Justin Hilliard things is interesting because he is so highly touted, and maybe it's not that it just isn't that good. It was just an injury thing. So you're like, oh, well, if this kid can get healthy, maybe he can come in and be a stud. And I remember they were saying, like, somebody asked Urban earlier in the year, because when the depth chart came out, it was like Justin Hilliard wasn't even in the 2 deep. And they're like, wait, isn't he healthy? Shouldn't he be in the 2? He finally is healthy for the first time in his career. He's a highly ranked kid. And someone asked Urban during a press conference, well, what about Hilliard? I'm not seeing him on the depth chart. And Urban was like, well, he's got to earn his way on the special teams before he gets the chance to play on defense. And he hasn't done that yet. So then yesterday I see him out there on special teams. So I'm like, oh, well, if that's good timing with Worley out. If Worley's out and he's now Hilliard's, earning his way, earning some PT through special teams, then, maybe this would be his chance to get in there. So, I'd love to see the guy pull it together after having such a hard time with injuries,
Yeah, I would too. And I mean, that'd be a great story. And just to, touch on, what you were thinking, how he got injured. I'm on Ohio State's website right now looking up his specific profile. And indeed, he had separate biceps injuries. It says here with the second one coming during last year after he had played in Ohio State's first 3 games. So, yeah, a kid that, unfortunately it looks like he's been bitten by the injury bug, and that has allowed guys behind him to step up. And you would love to see a Justin Hilliard get fully healthy and come out and, make an impact on the team. Because also on the profile, according to this, he was rated as the number 1 outside linebacker by ESPN and number 2 by 247 Sports. And for some reason, Rivals had him as an inside linebacker, but they had him ranked as the number 1 inside linebacker, in the country as a high school senior. So this was, we're talking about a kid that just all the talent in the world, but since he's gotten to Ohio State, has just been bitten by that stupid injury bug. So yeah, let's hope that, we can see some good things out of him in the near future.
Yeah, and not even in the 2 deep. So, and another guy who's been really bitten by the injury bug of Johnny Dixon is out again. So the undisclosed injury, that's why you saw Grimes in there. Grimes, not only in cleanup time, but he was in there. He's part of that zone 6. Zach Smith likes to rotate 6 wide receivers. He quote unquote starts 6 wide receivers.
Yeah.
Johnny Dixon, with Johnny Dixon out, Grimes was in that rotation of 6. So he was in there even earlier, and he made the catch late in the game thrown from Haskins, but he was actually out there earlier in the game playing. I saw him. So, tough luck for Johnny Dixon. Kind of cool to see Grimes getting in there.
Yeah, I know. Daggone it. With Johnny Dixon, you want to talk about a guy who's been bitten by the injury bug. Ankles, knees, he's been fighting it ever since he got here to Ohio State. In fact, I think even during his high school career, and finally gets himself healthy enough to where he's making a contribution, especially in that Indiana game, and catches a touchdown pass, which he pretty much was the reason for the touchdown pass. He just took off sprinting for 40 some yards, and that was that. And then, now he's back to being nicked up. And that gives a young guy, Trevon Grimes, a chance to get in there and, catch a pass and get his name in the stat sheet. He's now officially, in the books in Buckeye history, but, unfortunately to the, to the, because of what happened to Dixon. That's too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we close this one out, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. And that's because it's our only chance I'm going to probably have to talk about this year, or maybe, God only knows when. This is the first time Ohio State's ever played Army.
Yes.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the slowdown offense. So they come out, Ohio State only gets the ball once in the second quarter. They're doing this where, they run the ball, so of course the clock doesn't stop, and then they don't snap the ball till the clock has run almost all the way down. And so you get that, it really limits the number of possessions. And I'm sitting there thinking, the trend these days is to go more hurry up. And I'm like, if you were playing against a wishbone team that's just hammering you, and they're doing hurry up, it seems to me like at some point, you can only, like those 99-yard drives or those long methodical drives. I mean, they go for it on fourth down all the time. Like that 99-yard drive, I think had twice where they went for it on fourth down. And, Army was three for 4 on fourth downs in the game. And those are just back-breaking, and the defense gets exhausted, right? And I'm like, man, if they were doing hurry up, wouldn't that be even better? And I'm just sitting there, I was like, I was thinking about it. I'm like, does it make sense for them to just slow down the offense? I mean, I know they're like, well, maybe we'll limit the opportunities of the other team to be able to score. But at the same time, it seems like they could get some momentum going and really just like wear teams down, where in the second half, they're just steamroll them if they went with hurry up. And I don't know, maybe they just don't have the athletes to do it. Being Army, they typically, just about every team they play has guys that are, bigger, stronger, faster. So maybe it doesn't work when you have that level of athlete. I don't know. What was your thought on a slowdown offense?
So, and you're in reference to Army being the one slowing.
Yeah. I mean, they
down, correct?
Yeah, they hold the ball. They don't snap the ball till there's like 5 seconds or less every time on the play clock.
I think I think that's it. Army knows what they're capable of, and they know their athletes are not as good as most of the other teams that they're going to play. So not only are we going to run the ball to try and keep the ball out of our opponent's hands, because we know that they have better athletes than us, but if also we take the clock down to to the last second and eat up as much clock as possible, that's going to give us a better chance to win the game, because we do control the ball and we're not giving the other team an opportunity to score as much. And B, maybe it gives their guys a chance to rest a little bit, and they're not as conditioned as the other teams are. I thought that was interesting too. I was listening to some sports talk radio on my way to the game, and they were bringing up that very point, and I thought, they've got a point. It's aggravating, but I could see why they would want to do it. They quite simply, I think, just want to control the ball as much as possible and not give the other team a chance to win. Now, on the reverse side, would it work better if they try to hurry up rushing offense? I don't know, man, because running the ball, that obviously is going to wear you down more than throwing the ball. And so I think because of the style of their offense, taking the clock down as far as it's going to go and trying to eat up as much time as possible is giving their guys a chance to kind of catch a little bit of more of a breather in between plays. That's my take on it.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, if there's a team out there that gets more rest for their defense than Army, I'd like to know who it is, because that 99-yard play drive, I mean, their defense was like getting like I don't know how long it was, but it felt like they were on the sidelines for an hour. So
yeah, that was a 9.5 minute drive. And the one where they missed the field goal to start the second half, that used up over 6 minutes worth of time. Yeah. So, yeah, well, no wonder Army's defense is in the top 20 every year because they never frickin' are out there on the field that much.
Yeah.
They don't have as many, teams putting up points and yards against them because their offense is taking up so much damn time off the clock.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if you took it per possession, how many points did they give up per drive? Yeah, that might be a little more accurate way to gauge their defense rather than just overall. Because you're right, it's kind of it's like in the NBA. In the NBA, there's a lot of statistics that are like per 100 possessions. I don't know if you know this if you're an NBA guy, but they do this stuff where like per 100 possessions, this team gives up 100 points, or they score 108 points and they give up 102 or something like that, and it levels out that whole thing where some teams that like. You're like, oh my God, they're a great offensive team. They score these points, but it's because they run up and down the court and don't hold the ball long into the clock, right, and into the shot clock. So, maybe you need to kind of take that thinking and apply it to Army's football. It's an interesting thought. Yep.
That's I never put it into those terms, but that would probably be a better way to gauge Army's defense. I mean, let's face it, they gave up 586 total yards of offense to Ohio State yesterday, and they controlled the clock for 36 minutes and 57 seconds. I mean, they basically had it for almost one entire half of football. Ohio State had it for just a little bit over one half of football for 23 minutes. So, I mean, that's, almost 14 more minutes with the football. That's almost an entire quarter that Army had the ball longer than Ohio State, and yet still only had like half as many yards, 278 total yards on the day, 259 of them being on the ground. So that probably is a better way to gauge Army's defense. Of course, these stats are going to blow everything up per yard or per play or per possession or per drive or whatever. That's definitely going to inflate their numbers, after Saturday.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting here just doing the math. So they had 69 plays. Ohio State ran 69 plays versus Army, and by comparison versus Indiana. I'm having to do the math in my head here, so forgive me. They had 88. So almost 20 more plays, 19 more plays versus Indiana versus, so that's like 2 drives. 19 plays is basically 2 drives. So they had 2 more drives versus Indiana than they did versus Army. Now granted, they got 49 points where they only had 38 versus Army, but yeah. So that's,
there you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, that's crazy. Well, this has been another edition, folks, of the Buckeye Leafcast. We appreciate you downloading this edition of the show, brought to you by Choice Conversations by the one and only Mr. Chris Stefanick. And Chris, why don't you tell all the kind people out there a little bit more about Choice Conversations and that podcast that you host?
Yeah, sure. So Choice Conversations is a personal development podcast I host. I just released a show last week about one of my favorite books, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World from Harry Brown. Did a book review on that, and it's excellent. Check it out. And then I've got a new show coming out about what are some techniques you can do to be happier and what's a good way of putting this? So I've got a show coming out where there's strategies within it. I'm recording the show with Anthony Samaroff. It's coming out next Friday, where he's going to provide strategies for finding your happiness and finding purpose in life.
Awesome. Now, is this a Choice Conversation show, or this is something completely different?
Nope, it's just Choice Conversations, just telling you about some of our specific episodes. That's, anytime you go to Choice Conversations and check it out, I'll work, it's in the personal development area, trying to find ways that you can improve your life in all areas of your life, be it your, financially, be it in your relationships, or, just being happy in your own skin.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Check it out, choiceconversations.com. You can also hit up Chris on Twitter @ChoiceConvo. Let him know. say hi, have a choice conversation with the intergalactic Buckeye fan, Mr. Chris Stefanick. This episode also brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christie clean. Visit her Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. And also brought to you by Columbus Wired for your premier source for Central Ohio sports. Visit columbuswired.net. So there you have it. The big running Rebels, Chris, coming in this coming Saturday to take on the mighty Buckeyes in the Horseshoe, 12 o'clock game. Much like Army last week, I don't even think we need to really do a prelude on this upcoming team coming in. UNLV lost against Howard. Don't think it's going to be much of a matchup. Ohio State wins big by about 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's going to be a blowout. So, I mean, Howard is that loss that they had to Howard set a record for Las Vegas for the biggest point spread that a team had and then lost. So I think UNLV was favored by like 42 or 45 points over Howard and then lost. So that's not a record you want to own right there. So, yeah, they're not good. We're going to see a lot of Dwayne Haskins. So that's my prediction for the game.
There you go. That's it. Period. Dwayne Haskins, if anything, and if you're a betting man, head on out to UNLV's hometown, throw down a couple of bucks, and put it on Dwayne Haskins and the Buckeyes to win big. So let's leave them like we always do, sir. O-H.
I-O. Go Bucks!